All right, hello everyone. As you can see, we will be doing this presentation from the KCGA office as well, our second one that we've done here. Today we're going to talk about rules 17 through 19, which are the penalty relief rules within the new rules of golf. And so we'll jump right into those right away. So rule 17 is going to talk about penalty areas. We're going to talk about what a penalty area is, what we can and cannot do, and how that is expanded out of the water hazards into this new concept known as a penalty area. Rule 18 is going to talk about the stroke and distance relief, a ball out of bounds, and also a provisional ball, and Rule 19 will be an unplayable ball. When we get into these rules, you will see there's not much change to them, a couple of tweaks here and there with the new rules. They are subtle, but there are a few of them in there to talk about. So starting with Rule 17, it's been divided up into 3 different subdivisions, options for what we can do with our balls in the penalty area, what we can do after we've played a ball from the penalty area, and then a quick discussion about some options that we cannot do underneath other rules when our ball is in a penalty area. Some of the notable changes for the new rules, the term water hazard and hazard has gone away. We don't use those anymore. Occasionally we do use them just by habit and so on and so forth, but we are referring to a penalty area. The word hazard and water hazard are not supposed to be used anymore. Penalty areas are not just for water now, so penalty areas can be expanded to anything that the course wants to mark, such as tall grass, a wooded area, desert area, things like that, that we will actually help the player with some time issues and not have to go back and play from where they last played from, so where we can just actually drop out under the penalty area rule with a one-stroke penalty where it crossed the edge of the penalty area and move on from there. Okay, the edge is the term we use now instead of margin. Just a little clarification on a definition and a term there. Nothing changes what we refer to that as, though, however. And the relief on the opposite edge of the margin of a lateral water hazard that we had before is no longer an option in the new rules of golf. It can be put back in with a local rule, but for the most part you won't see this opposite equidistant relief option on the other side because most players didn't really understand it. It was kind of confusing and it doesn't get used all that much. Okay, any penalty area can be treated as red. Moving forward, we kind of expect to see about 90-10 as a ratio of red to yellow penalty areas, but the yellow won't go away, but for the most part, you're going to see most penalty areas marked as red. All right, as we were talking about, red or yellow are the 2 options that we have in a yellow penalty area, and it will affect how the player's relief options will be depending on red or yellow. And this is also the same that it has always been with a red water hazard and a yellow water hazard, with, again, like I mentioned earlier, with just a couple little tweaks. Mentions directly in the rules now also is that a player may stand in a penalty area when playing a ball from outside of the penalty area. This also includes when you're taking relief from that penalty area. So there's no such thing as taking full relief from a penalty area. Your relief area may have you still standing in that same penalty area, and that wouldn't be a penalty, and it wouldn't also require a redrop in that situation. Your ball would be in play, and you can just go ahead and play with that stance there. Okay, so when is a ball in a penalty area? 17.1a gives us that definition, as a ball is in the penalty area when any part of that ball touches the ground or anything else, such as a natural object, if it's laying on a leaf inside of a penalty area, and it has to be inside that edge that has been defined either by the stakes or by a line of paint or by possibly some sort of definition on the hard card or the terms of the competition, such as the cut of the grass. And it's also in that penalty area if any part of it is above. So if you can see in this picture here, we have a really wonderfully well photoshopped golf ball into that bush there. So that ball is inside the penalty area, so it is treated as being in the penalty area, even though it's not touching the ground. Okay, we've talked about this on a number of occasions throughout the rules about the hierarchy of the golf course and what zones take care of another zone, so to speak. So if we have the 5 areas of the golf course, we've known that the penalty area is the highest ranking when it comes to where your ball will lie. So if at any time your ball is touching a penalty area and another part of the golf course, that ball is in that penalty area. So Rule 2.2c covers that pretty well. Okay, so what can we do when that ball is in the penalty area? We have options to play the ball as it lies or to take relief options. That would be penalty relief that we're talking about. You don't get a free drop out of a a penalty area, but you can play the ball as it lies. So without penalty, under the same rules that apply in the general area, we get to play that ball as it lies. So for example, here you can see a player removing a loose impediment. We've talked about that now. That is a new change in the rules, that we can remove loose impediments. But if your ball is in a penalty area, you can do everything that you can do in the fairway. You can take practice swings, you can remove loose impediments, you can ground your club, you can touch the water, that's fine. The new rules are allowing that. If you ever, however, want to take penalty relief and get yourself out of that penalty area, there's some options that we have that we can go through, and they really haven't changed. They just have kind of changed the way that we do it, such as the back on the line relief, and the fact that we do have to play the ball from a relief area instead of the ball rolling to a certain spot and seeing if it is okay to play. So we just need that ball to get into the relief area. 17.1D and 17.2 will cover these, and we will get into in depth about those procedures here shortly. So we only can take these rules that apply to penalty relief from a penalty area if we have knowledge or virtual certainty that that ball is in that penalty area. If we have knowledge or virtual certainty and we proceed underneath this rule, even if we find the ball outside of the penalty area, we are still proceeding by the rules correctly once we have that knowledge or virtual certainty. So if that ball is at rest in the penalty area, as it is here in this example, once you put a ball into play and take relief in this for this way, the original ball is no longer in play. So as I mentioned, if we have knowledge or virtual certainty and this player here drops into the relief area and we find the ball afterwards outside of the penalty area, the original ball is now lost and cannot be played. We are proceeding correctly underneath the rules here in this situation. Okay, and that's, like I said, it's true if it's even found within the 3-minute search. So once we get a ball in play with the penalty area rule, we have to proceed underneath that. And just as a reminder, that ball becomes in play when that ball leaves your hand is we're dropping it. Not when it comes to rest or anything like that. It's as soon as that ball leaves your fingers, it is in play, falling through the air. And then at that point, the original ball becomes lost, even if it is found within that 3-minute search time. All right, so for relief in the ball in the penalty area, we have 3 options if you decide not to play it as it lies. Number 1 is the stroke and distance relief. Number 2 is back on a line relief. And number 3 is the lateral relief, but that is for a red penalty area only. So 1 and 2 are going to be for red or yellow. Number 3 will be for a red penalty area only. Okay? So looking at option number 1, stroke and distance relief, as we've talked about many rules before, stroke and distance relief is always an option for the player. No matter where your stroke is from, no matter where your stroke comes to rest, you can go back with 1 stroke for where you last played from, stroke and distance. Okay, option number 2 will be the back on the line relief. And that procedure is pretty similar to what we're very familiar with the yellow water hazard from before, where you would line up where the ball last crossed the edge of the hazard and go back as far as you want, but now we're lining up with the edge of the penalty area, going back as far as you want on that line. But now we do have a 1 club length relief area that we're dropping on instead of dropping on the exact line. And the third option is the 2 club length options, now referred to as lateral relief. There is only one other time where we have this 2 club length option. That would be for an unplayable lie that we will talk about a little bit later today. But most of your relief areas are going to be 1 club length. This is an example where you have a 2 club length relief area. All right, so let's talk about the back on the line procedure. We've done this a little bit before, but just to make sure that we're all clear on this, this example here is we have a reference line that is created on the back on the line relief, and that reference line is created from the point where the ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area, lined up with the hole, and go back as far as you want. That becomes the reference line. On the back on the line procedure, the player then will select what that reference point is on that line. He or she will determine what that is and then use that as a reference point and create the relief area with 1 club length and drop and play from that relief area. If the player doesn't select that reference point, when he or she drops it, it will be selected for her. And we'll talk about that here in a minute as well. Okay? Again, the reference point is a point on the course chosen by the player that is on the reference line, okay, and is farther from the hole than that estimated point, so you can't choose a point inside of that penalty area because we've got that reference point that is up there where it last crossed the edge of the hazard, the penalty area, and with no limit how far back we can go on that one. We can go back as far as we want. Okay? As the rules talk about here in choosing this reference point, there's the word should right there. You should check that or mark that reference point with a T, but it's not a requirement. The reason why we want this player to select that reference point so we can see where the relief area is actually defined by the player. It's a lot simpler to come up with that, and you can mark it with a T or any object that you want there. Okay? If the player does drop the ball without selecting that reference point, the reference point is going to be selected for you, so to speak. It's going to be treated as being the point on that line that is the same distance from the hole as where the ball struck the ground. So for example, this player here, if she does not select a reference point and drops it, the equidistant point on that reference line becomes her reference point. So if her ball even moves forward a little bit, it's likely going to be outside of the relief area and it's going to require a redrop. So the new rules, we're trying to get the redrops completely taken care of, and so that we don't have to do that anymore. So this is why the rules say we should mark a reference point, so that way we're a little bit more careful about where we drop the ball further behind that reference point so it can easily stay in the relief area. All right, size of this relief area, as I mentioned, is 1 club length. And the limits on the location of that relief area, it must not be near the hole in the reference point, which is a very common theme for the relief area. It may be in any area of the course, except that same penalty area. So here's an example where you could be dropping on any area of the golf course, such as a bunker, a general area position, but it can't be the same penalty area. You could drop it into another penalty area if you think it's going to help you, but you can't drop it in the same penalty area. Okay? But if one more than area of that golf course is located within that reference point, the ball must come to rest in the relief area where it first struck the golf course. So for example, if you're playing a hole that has an island green, and an example that I always give is number 18 at Creekmore here in Kansas City. The red line is very close to the putting green on the left side of that par 5. If your ball crosses the edge of the penalty area there just left of the green, you're going to have a reference point marked, and you might have 2 club lengths that get you onto the putting green, which is fine in the rules of golf. But there's also going to be some part of the general area that is going to be in your relief area. So if you drop that ball correctly and it lands on the putting green, it has to stay and come to rest on the putting green for you to play it from there. So if it rolls onto the fringe, which is now the general area, we will require a redrop in that situation. That's true for lateral relief or back on a line relief, as we're talking about here. Okay, so speaking of lateral relief, this procedure is very similar that we're used to. We're going to have that reference point is going to be where the original ball last crossed the edge of that red penalty area. And notice in this rule it does say red penalty area. It's just reminding us that this is a red penalty area rule only for the lateral relief. So the size of the relief area measured from that reference point is 2 club lengths, but with these limitations, again, not near the hole in the reference point, and maybe in any area of the golf course except the same penalty area, and then the same stipulations that we just went through for a multiple golf course situation within that relief area. Ball must come to rest in that first part of the golf course that it strikes. All right, here's a new concept in the rules that has actually been introduced as a new concept in the rules. It has been around for a little bit, formerly known as an environmentally sensitive area within the rules of golf, but now we treat it as what's called a no-play zone. And so if your ball is in a no-play zone in a penalty area, you must take relief, okay? So one of the things that we're talking about within the penalty area and a no-play zone is if that ball is at rest in the no-play zone inside of the penalty area, even if there is some spots that is not a no-play zone within that penalty area, you must still take relief. You don't get to drop it out of the no-play zone and keep it in the penalty area. Now this is going to be a rare situation more than likely, that we're going to have a penalty area that is divided up into a no-play zone and just a regular penalty area. For the most part, you're going to see the penalty area and the no-play zone be concurrently the same measurements. But Rule 17.1D, is you're going to have to take relief from that because 17.1E says you cannot play from that no-play zone and you must take penalty relief. Okay? All right. However, when a no-play zone on the course interferes with stance or swing when your ball is in the penalty area, you may get free relief. Okay, so here's where it gets a little bit different, is if your ball is in a penalty area but not inside of a no-play zone, and your stance or your swing is affected by that no-play zone, now you can take free relief, or you can take penalty relief, but you have to take relief in this situation. You cannot have that interference of the no-play zone happen during the stroke. That's the whole purpose of the no-play zone. Someone in our seminar earlier this week mentioned, well, why don't you just think about it as a immovable obstruction, and that's a very good way to look at it. So you got to take full relief from that no-play zone, and if you have free relief within the penalty area where your ball was at rest, you can go ahead and drop your ball in the penalty area for free relief. However, if there is no spot that you can drop it within that penalty area, you must take penalty relief and get yourself out of the penalty area. And this is, again, area of intended stance or swing. So you can see the options here, one of two, is take that penalty relief underneath what we've just talked about, the procedures. whether you can use your back on a line or the 2 club links if it's a red penalty area, or you get your free relief. Again, if it's interference of your swing and stance, but if your ball is in the no play zone, you must take relief out of the entire penalty area. Okay. Here's where we have the options, or excuse me, the explanations of what that relief area is going to be if we are dropping inside of the penalty area underneath this rule. The reference point is going to be the nearest point of complete relief from the no play zone. So similar to the cart path that we're talking about, we need to get complete relief away from this no play zone. And the size of this reference, measured from the reference point to give you the size of the relief area, is 1 club length, but it must be in the same penalty area where the ball lies and not near the holes of the reference point. So pretty straightforward relief procedure here, but it is a little bit different about when you're going to get relief. So please be clear on the differences with a ball in a no play zone or a ball in a penalty area that is not in a no play zone, but we do have interference from the no play zone. All right, so that's everything that we're talking about with the penalty areas is what we're going to do. Again, the options seem very similar to what we're used to, so hopefully there's not too much confusion. 17.2 is the rule that we have where if we've played a ball from a penalty area and it comes to rest in the same penalty area or another penalty area or becomes lost or out of bounds, what are our options? And this rule can get a little complicated, but there are some good examples in the rules book, some images and some diagrams that we have here. When your ball is played from a relief area, as we have here, where the player has played their first stroke to point A and plays from A to B, that ball is still in the same penalty area, but like if that player doesn't want to play from position B now, that player will have those same options that we have underneath the penalty area rule. So 1, they can go back to where they last played from at point A. 2, they can go on back on a line relief using the point where the ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area, which is marked here at point X, and go back as far as you want using that option. Or 3, you can use the lateral relief and take the 2 club links from point X and drop the ball within that relief area. But an additional option is now available for us underneath this rule. That 4th option is you can go back and play from where you last played from outside of that penalty area. Now again, this rule is exactly the same as it has always been. It has not changed, but this is something that we've termed regression in the past, where you get to go back and play a stroke or play from the place where you played a stroke from outside of the penalty area. So if this player hits their tee shot 1 into point A, they hit their second shot to point B 2, they can go ahead for 1 penalty stroke and go all the way back to 4, 3, playing their 4th stroke from the tee in that situation. So well within the rules that they can go back to where they last played from. All right, so if the player takes stroke and distance relief by dropping a ball in the penalty area and then decides not to play the drop ball before it comes to rest. So for example, you went from A to B in our previous slide and you came back and dropped a ball at A for this penalty of stroke and distance, and you can't play that ball, then you still have some options to go ahead and get the ball out of that penalty area. So you may take further relief outside of that penalty area under rules 17.1D2 or 3, which are the options that we've talked about, or under 17.2A, which is the rules of playing from a penalty area and staying in the penalty area. Same procedure. Try not to get you confused there. But if the player does so, he will get 1 or more penalty strokes for one more penalty stroke for a total of 2 penalty strokes. So for example, you went from A to B and came back to A and dropped it. That's 1 penalty stroke for stroke and distance. But then you don't like it. If you want to go ahead and take your 2 club links for it last crossed, you can pick up your ball and drop there, but you're adding another penalty stroke. You don't get a free drop there. So we're giving you a chance to go under stroke and distance for 1 stroke, but if you did, you still get that penalty. But to get it out of the penalty area, you're going to take another penalty stroke. The way that I've always thought about it in that situation is once you have the ball in your hand and you cross out of that penalty area, that's going to cost you a stroke to get that ball out of there. Okay? The player may take such relief outside of the penalty area without first dropping a ball in the penalty area, but you will still get a total of 2 penalty strokes. So you don't have to go through that stroke and distance procedure and drop there, but you can take it straight on out and get a penalty, take the 2 penalty strokes in there. Again, the rule is the same it has always been. All right. 17.3 talks about you don't get relief underneath other rules when your ball is inside of the penalty area. So once your ball is in a penalty area, as we talked about the hierarchy of the golf course, you got to deal with the penalty area rules. The other rules are not going to apply. There is one exception that we will talk about as well, but for the most part, you are dealing with the penalty area rules, not another rule. So if you have interference by an abnormal course condition, which would be a bridge in a water over a water course, or you might have something like a animal hole inside of a penalty area, you do not get relief for that. Casual water that is now termed as temporary water does not exist inside of a penalty area. It is part of the penalty area, so you wouldn't get relief for temporary water. You do not get relief under 16.3 for an embedded ball. If your ball is embedded in the penalty area, you proceed as the ball is played as it lies, or underneath a penalty area rule. And as we hopefully know, an unplayable ball. We cannot take an unplayable ball from inside of a penalty area. Again, not a change there. Here is the exception to this rule. A player may take free relief for a dangerous animal condition if your ball is in a penalty area, which makes sense because most penalty areas are water courses. You're going to have some dangerous animals hanging out there. So if a player has a ball that is in a penalty area, you have the two options of free penalty relief, keeping the ball inside of the, free relief, keeping your ball inside that penalty area, or you can take the ball out of the penalty area for one penalty stroke. And we went through the procedures of what to do with a dangerous animal in our last example, or our last session at St. Andrews. All right, so we made it through Rule 17 fairly quickly. I have a question here. In a stroke play event, Bailey's ball is at rest in a red penalty area next to a live snake. Which of the following is not allowed? So we have four things here that she can or cannot do that we're going to go through and see if she can do these. First of all, may Bailey move the snake with her hand or her club? B, Bailey may take free relief in the penalty area where the danger does not exist. C, Bailey may take free relief in the general area where the danger does not exist. Or D, Bailey may take penalty relief from the red penalty area. So as you go over these options, what can she not do? There's only one option that she cannot do, and that's take the free relief in the general area. So those other options that she can do are fine. So she can move the club with her hand or move the snake with her hand or a club, which if she wants to do, more power to her. I don't want to see her do it. I'm not going to do it, but that's up to the player. Okay? She can also take free relief inside of the penalty area for the dangerous animal situation. She can find a spot within that penalty area that is no near the hole and drop inside the penalty area. Or D, she can proceed directly underneath the penalty area rule and go ahead and take her penalty relief. But she's not allowed free relief outside of the penalty area for this condition. All right, so that's it for Rule 17. Moving along quite a bit, we're now to Rule 18 that talks about stroke and distance, a ball lost or out of bounds, or a provisional ball. Okay, so let's talk about what we have going on within this rule. We've got the basic stroke and distance is allowed at any time. I mentioned that earlier in the video here today. What we're going to do with a ball that's lost or out of bounds, stroke and distance relief must be taken, and then we'll talk about a provisional ball. This rule is very, very similar to the way it has been in the past. There are a couple of tweaks, especially with the provisional ball and the relief area, and we'll get to those here right away. So speaking about the relief area, for a stroke and distance that is played not in the teeing area, which is what we usually talk about with stroke and distance, we always seem to think that the tee shot goes out of bounds more than anything else, which may or may not be the case. But stroke and distance, again, is allowed anywhere on the golf course. So one club length relief area from the spot of your last stroke when taking stroke and distance relief in that general area, a bunker, or a penalty area now applies. So in the previous rules, when we were taking stroke and distance relief, we had to come back and drop the ball on the exact same spot as the last stroke. So we always had the question, well, what if you drop it into the divot of the last stroke? Well, that doesn't apply so much anymore because that divot won't be in the relief area that we're talking about now. Okay, so we'll have the reference point is the spot we last played from, plus we're going to get one club length now as a relief area. Okay? A ball is now not found within 3 minutes is now considered lost, so we've gone from 5 to 3 minutes. We've already talked about that, and that clock will start the minute your side or your caddy goes and starts looking for it. So spectators do not count. The junior golfers that we have out there, when your parents are out there helping you and they go look for your golf ball, the clock doesn't start if mom or dad starts looking for it. Announcement of a provisional ball may be made to anyone now. It had to be made to either a fellow competitor or your opponent last year in previous rules. But now you just need to make the announcement to anyone, just so that somebody knows you are playing a provisional. That's all we want you to do. This is really in line with giving the player a little bit more freedom within the rules. We trusted the player to not have to call somebody over to identify a golf ball, so on and so forth. we're letting the player have some freedom here and just let somebody know you're playing a provisional. Okay? And now a player may go back and play a provisional at any time within that 3-minute search period. So we used to have a rule that said once you've gone forward in search, you could not come back and play a provisional. Well, that has been taken out of the rules. Right now we've got that 3-minute search period, and you're pretty much allowed to do what you like in that thing within the rules, which now includes going back and hitting a provisional. So for example, if you hit a tee shot down the right side where there's some OB, and you walk out 100 yards and you're like, you know what, I better go back and hit a provisional, you can do that. Of course, that will also start your 3-minute time for searching for your ball as well. So, but if you have started searching for your ball. So be aware that that 3-minute time will keep on running as you go back to play for your provisional. Now, if you hadn't made it to your ball and haven't started searching, your 3 minutes has not started, okay, as long as you're not delaying play. All right, so the purpose of this rule is what we're going to do when a ball is lost outside of a penalty area or if it comes to rest out of bounds. The required progression of playing this hole from the teeing area to the hole has been broken, but we got to keep it going. So what this rule is saying, well, something has happened, your ball is lost or something has occurred, we got to get you back on the path of playing this hole. This rule covers how we're going to do that. And this rule also covers how and when we should play a provisional ball, how it should be played. All right, so we have to know what lost means. In the rules of golf, the definition of lost has many different things that can make it happen. So if a player or the player's partner, the player's partner or the partner's caddy has begun to search, the 3-minute time limit has started. So you have 3 minutes to search for that ball. If the search begins and is then temporarily interrupted for a good reason, your time is going to stop. So for example, if I'm searching for Jim's ball and I decide to go ahead and hit a shot and Jim is standing in my line, you know, we're just trying to keep the play going, Jim can step off to the side while I hit a shot. His time is going to stop. You know, helping Jim look for the ball. We're going to let that player step aside for a good reason, but then it's going to start up again. So if there's a good reason to stop the clock, we will. Right? If the ball is lost or out of bounds, the player must, there's that word, must take stroke and distance relief. Right behind that must, there's an exception. So there you go. So a player may substitute another ball underneath another rule when it is known or virtually certain what happened to the ball. For example, it came to rest in a penalty area, or the local rule is in effect that we now have for a ball out of bounds that we will talk about a little bit later. But if another rule applies, we do not have to go through stroke and distance. And that's what this exception is all about. And we will get very in-depth into those exceptions. All right, so talking about 18.1. Again, at any time, bold and highlighted there. A player may take stroke and distance relief by adding one penalty stroke by playing the original ball or a substituted ball from where the previous stroke was made. And this is going to be true in the teeing area, the general area, a penalty area, a bunker, or the putting green, anywhere in the golf course. We do have specific relief procedures listed out in Rule 14 about what we're going to do to get that ball back in play in all these different areas. 14.6 is the rule that's going to cover that. Okay. Again, the player always has this stroke and distance relief option no matter where the ball is on the course, where it comes to rest or where it was played from. It doesn't matter. We always have the stroke and distance option. Even when a rule requires the player to take relief in a certain way or to play a ball from a certain place. So for example, if you hit a tee shot to the middle of the fairway, the rules of golf say play the ball as it lies. It's in the fairway, you have to play it as it lies. If you don't want to, this rule says you don't have to. You can go back and play your tee shot again. Please give me a good example of why you would replay that of a tee shot right in the middle of the fairway, but the rules do allow it. Okay, this is very important to note for all players and officials here, that once a player puts another ball in play under the penalty of stroke and distance, the original ball is no longer in play and cannot be played. So, for example, we have a player here that is dropping a ball in a relief area. And so, if the original ball is found on the golf course, even within that 3-minute search time, it's too late. That original ball is now out of play. So, the example here, she drops it into that relief area and someone says, we just found your first ball, it's over here. It doesn't matter. Once that ball has left that player's fingers and is being played underneath stroke and distance, which is putting the ball into play, the original ball is now lost and the substituted ball becomes the ball in play. Okay? This rule does not apply to a ball being played from where the previous stroke was made when another player announces the provisional. So when you announce that there's a provisional and you drop it, that provisional can still be played, even if we find the original ball. So that's what this rule is saying. So 18.3b is going to cover all the situations with the provisional ball, but if you have announced that you're playing a provisional ball, you're okay to go ahead and play that provisional ball, and still the original will be available to you if we find it within 3 minutes time limit. Or if you're playing a second ball and stroke play under 14.7b or 20.1c3, so if you are playing a second ball because you're not sure of a serious breach of a wrong place has occurred, or you're playing a second ball to get a ruling later, you're allowed to do that, and stroke and distance does not apply, and those balls aren't automatically in play in that situation. All right, so if a ball is lost or out of bounds, what are we going to do? All right, well, let's first of all find out when a ball is lost or out of bounds. So first of all, it's lost if it's not found within 3 minutes after the player or his or her caddy begins to search for it. Also includes your partner as well, as we've talked about many times. The player and the partner are the same thing within the rules. Okay. So when the ball is lost, if a ball is found in that time but is uncertain whether it's the player's ball, the player must promptly attempt to identify the ball. So if we find a ball, and here's one of those situations where we've talked about the difference between the words a and the. The rules of golf just say, hey, if you found a ball, you need to try to identify it as it could be possibly yours. Obviously, it's got to be in the same area. You know, we're not going to make you identify every golf ball that you find out there. But if you're looking for your golf ball and a ball is found, you must identify it. Okay? And this is, you're allowed a reasonable time to do this. So, for example, if I'm searching for my ball on the right side of the fairway and Jim finds it on the left side of the fairway because it hit a tree or something like that and says, hey, this could be your ball, Todd, I can go ahead and go over there and search for it, even if my 3 minutes is now up as I'm walking to my ball. So if I've spent 2 minutes and 45 seconds looking for my ball and Jim says something and it takes me 45 seconds to walk over there, I'm still going to be okay to identify my ball. It's not going to be defined as lost. But my time will be up at that point. So if that's not my ball, original ball will be lost at that point. Okay? Again, it gives us a reasonable amount of time to get to where that ball is going to be. And like we said, if it's not yours, now you're lost. All right, so now we know what a lost ball is. Let's talk about a ball out of bounds. A ball is out of bounds at rest only when all of it is outside the boundary edge of the golf course. So a couple of examples that we have here. What is the boundary edge of the golf course? If it's defined by stakes, it's going to be the inside point of those stakes. The inside point is the golf course side. So you can see what we have the difference between the green and the gray here. We've got two balls that are out of bounds and one ball that is in bounds on the line there, and then one ball that is to the right that is clearly in bounds. Hopefully you think that one is in bounds. But this ball up here on the top is actually in bounds because part of it is touching the golf course. Okay? And this also includes overhanging. So there's a difference here between a ball being on the putting green and a ball being on the golf course. So if a ball is almost completely out of bounds, but a little part of it is on the line, even though it's not touching the ground, in overhanging the golf course, it is in bounds. Okay? Hopefully this doesn't come up a lot with all these balls getting very close to a line, but that's how we're going to define it. So then if we also get to the point where we have a white line lining up the golf, or defining what our out of bounds edge is, that white line itself is out of bounds. So the ball still has to touch the golf course. So in this example over here, we've got one ball that's clearly out of bounds. Then we have one ball that is entirely on the white line. That ball is out of bounds because it is not touching the golf course. Okay? And then we've got two balls there that are touching the golf course that are clearly in bounds. Okay? So that pretty much explains everything. And also we talk about the natural object thing. So like if a ball's laying on a leaf or a twig or something like that, the same rules will apply. So it's the same deal that we talked about whether a ball is in a bunker or a penalty area. It doesn't change the definition of out of bounds as well. And as I mentioned, the overhanging part is if the ball is above the boundary edge or any other part of the golf course. If it's up in a tree and is overhanging the golf course, the ball is still in bounds. We're just going to go straight down and see where that point lies, whether it's in bounds or out of bounds. A player may stand out of bounds to play a ball that is on the course. There's no stipulations there. Okay. But if the ball is now lost or out of bounds, the player must, underlined there again, take stroke and distance relief by adding one penalty stroke. And you may play the original ball or another ball as a substituted ball at that point from where the previous stroke was last made. Again, we've got the 5 areas of the golf course that we're talking about where you would go back to last play from. All right, so here's the exceptions that we noted earlier. What can we do that is not stroke and distance? So we have some 4 situations that we're talking about here that Stroke and distance may not apply, but it could if you wish. It may not apply if the ball is lost. So, for example, we have to have that, first of all, I want to point that out, we have to have knowledge or virtual certainty that this has happened in these 4 situations. So let's go over these 4 situations here. So number 1, if the ball came to rest on the course and was moved by an outside influence, the example here at the bottom left of a dog moving a golf ball, although it does look like it was from the teeing area, so that ball wouldn't be in play, but that's just kind of the cool little photo that I had here. So if the ball is in play and an outside influence moves the ball and he runs off with it, the ball is lost, we do not have to go under stroke and distance. We get free relief in that situation. Or if a ball is played as a wrong ball by another player, and we know that that has happened. So in this example here, Ed is about to play Dave's ball, and if Dave doesn't, stop him for any reason, but knows that his ball has been played, he gets free relief. He doesn't have to go stroke and distance if we can't find his ball, even if Ed happens to put it off and lose the ball out of bounds or something like that. He'll get free substitution, but we do have knowledge of virtual certainty that it was played as a wrong ball. We do not have to go under stroke and distance. So we talked about in our last seminar about free relief rules. If a ball comes to rest on the course in or on a movable obstruction or in an abnormal course condition that we've talked about, and we have knowledge of virtual certainty. For example, a ball goes into this outhouse here and we just can't find it, but we know it's in there. We do not have to go under stroke and distance. We get to apply the immovable obstruction rule or the abnormal course condition rule. And if we know the ball is in a penalty area. So if a ball is lost in a penalty area, we do not have to go under stroke and distance. It is one of the options of the penalty area rule, but not a requirement. We can use the other options if we so wish. We do have a player here that looks like if she drops it, she might get a penalty because she's dropping it from shoulder height. She must have forgot the new rules. But knowledge of virtual certainty is all we need. We don't need that ball to be found to proceed underneath this rule. And also, if a ball was deliberately deflected or stopped by any person, we're going to deal with that underneath the Rule 11. So there's a video that I don't have here for you to see, but you have these 2 kids that actually, one of those kids deflected this ball in motion purposely. So we're going to go ahead and apply Rule 11.2 and deal with it that way. And if this kid happened to pick that ball up and just take it and run off with it, and we know he's got it, we do not have to proceed under stroke and distance as a lost ball. If we have knowledge of virtual certainty that this kid has deflected or taken this ball, then we can apply the free relief rule. So that used to be called the virtual certainty 4 in the rules of golf. It's now actually 6, but that's just because there's kind of a couple little subsets within these examples here. So there's a good slide that goes ahead and just takes care of all those examples there. And this will also lead us to what we've called the choosies before, if you have played a provisional, and we'll get into that a little bit later, to where you actually have the choice of playing your provisional or proceeding underneath this rule. All right, speaking of provisional, we're there. All right, 18.3, a couple of little changes as I've kind of noted to a little bit earlier, but for the most part, the provisional ball rule is exactly the same as it has always been. We've got 3 subsets here. When can we play a provisional? What do we have to do to get that provisional correctly announced? And when can we play the provisional till it becomes the ball in play? That's what these 3 parts of this rule will talk about. So under 18.3a, a provisional ball is allowed if a ball might, highlighted there, be lost outside of a penalty area or be out of bounds. So if there's any doubt to this ball being able to be found outside of a penalty area, we can play a provisional. If you have a ball that is headed toward a lake that is a penalty area, but it's surrounded by some high weeds and the ball could be outside of the penalty area, even though most people think the ball is probably in the penalty area, if there's a little bit of doubt it's outside of the penalty area, a provisional is okay. Okay. So to save time, the player may play another ball provisionally under the penalty of stroke and distance, and that penalty of stroke and distance will only apply if the provisional ball becomes the ball in play. It's not a penalty just for playing a provisional, even though it kind of sounds that way. That's not how that reads. All right, for a ball that might be lost, this applies when the original ball has not been found and identified and is not yet lost. So we have a definition of what lost is. So we know that if it is currently not been found or identified and is not yet lost, we get to play a provisional. If the ball is lost, you're not playing a provisional. You're playing under stroke and distance. So when a ball might be lost in a penalty area but also might be lost somewhere else on the course, as I just talked about, here's the good example of it. A player hits a ball toward an area. We're not sure if it's in the penalty area or if it's in that wooded area. A provisional is allowed in the situation. But if the player is aware that the only possible place the original ball could be is in a penalty area, a provisional ball is not allowed, and a ball played from where the previous stroke was made is now the player's ball in play under stroke and distance. So for example here, we've got a menacing little par 3 here. Water on the left means Todd's going to hit it into that, so we'll just use me as an example here. Todd hits his tee shot straight into the lake. We know the ball is in the penalty area, but Todd, not knowing the rules for some reason, goes back to where he last played from and says, this is a provisional. And so I think I'm proceeding underneath the provisional ball rule. I make another stroke and knock it onto the green. That is not a provisional. That is now laying 3 on the green with my ball in play under the penalty of stroke and distance. There was no reason for me to believe that this ball was not in the penalty area. So I had to proceed underneath that rule. All right. Now, if the provisional ball itself might be lost or outside of the penalty area or be out of bounds, the player may play another provisional ball. Okay? That provisional ball will have the same relationship to the first provisional as the first provisional had to the original ball. So I made a little snowman here for everybody to look at here. We've got an original ball that was played. We're not sure about where it is, so we played a provisional. There's a relationship provisional 1 to the original. If you think that provisional might be lost, you can play a second provisional. The provisional has the relationship to the first provisional, but there is absolutely no connection between provisional 2 and the original ball. The best example I have of this is we had this situation come up in the U.S. Open local qualifier a few years ago at Blue Hills, where a player played a tee shot on number 1, thought it might be out of bounds, announced that it was a provisional, hit a provisional, that might be lost, and then didn't announce that second one was a provisional, was already starting to fume a little bit, so hit that, what he thought was a provisional out there. And so now we have 3 balls possibly in play. So we've got this situation that we've got drawn up here on the board. So if the player finds the original ball is going to be in play, no problem. Even though that second provisional was not announced, again, there's not a connection to the original ball. So finding the original ball does not have any effect on the fact that he did not announce it. Now, however, if the original ball is not found, provisional 1 is no longer a ball that we can deal with because provisional 2 becomes the ball in play because of no announcement made. So the relationship between provisional 2 and provisional 1 was broken when the player didn't announce it. So if the original ball is not found, provisional 1 goes away. Provisional 2 is now in play, laying 5. Under stroke and distance, both those times there. So it is important to announce the provisional, but that's how this relationship works. If you have any questions on that, go ahead and email me, but you can't ask me right now because you're not here. All right, so a little bit of a slight change in the announcement of a provisional ball. First of all, before the stroke is made, the player must announce, this is the way it's always been, that he or she is going to play a provisional ball. But however, that's the wording of this rule. There's nothing in there that says must announce to your opponent, to another player. It just says you must announce it, so somebody just has to hear it. Your caddy, your partner, a spectator, anybody. Or just you could say if like your fellow group is all the way up there to say, hey guys, I'm going to hit a provisional. Just some sort of announcement that you are going to hit a provisional is fine. It's not enough for the player just to say, I'm going to reload or I'm going to hit again. Okay, this is the way the rule has always been. The word provisional must be used or some sort of indication that we're proceeding under 18.3. You know, I've always made the little joke about saying, I'm going to proceed under 18.3. You know, you can do that, great, but your playing partners might not play a lot of golf with you after that. So if this player does not announce, as that example that I was talking about at the Blue Hills example with the 2 provisionals, and plays a ball from where the previous stroke was made, that ball is the player's ball in play under stroke and distance. As a starter for many of the KCGA events on the first tee there are some times where some players have to play a provisional. Of course, the first tee jitters are going on and so on and so forth. People aren't thinking very clearly. A player might just knock one out of bounds and go grab another one and tee it up and not say anything. As a starter, I will tell them, hey, is this a provisional? Or say something to them, and if they respond, that is fine for an announcement. They don't actually have to use the word if there's some sort of conversation going on there. But if that player doesn't announce it and makes that stroke, they're going to have that original ball be lost immediately and be laying 3. Okay? So playing that provisional ball hasn't changed. The way that we're going to do it, we're going to allow the player to play the provisional ball up to a spot that is not near the hole of where the original ball should be. So the player may continue to play the provisional ball without losing his status as a provisional, as long as that ball is played from the same distance or a spot further from the hole than the original ball. So if you think your ball is lost 150 yards from the hole and you play a stroke from 150 yards from the hole with your provisional, that's still a provisional. Okay, it's got to be played near the hole than where your original ball is played. So this example right here that we have on the board, player hits a ball, not sure where it is there to the left, so she plays in a provisional that gets a little bit shorter of where that original ball might be in play there at spot A. She can make another stroke at spot A and hit it up to spot B and still find her original ball, and her original ball is still going to be in play. So the provisional ball, a stroke must be made past the point of where we think that original ball is. All right, but it stops becoming that provisional ball when it becomes the ball in play under one of the situations that we've talked about, or is abandoned if we just leave that, that provisional ball alone, and therefore it will become a wrong ball. So if we get to a situation where the original ball is found, the provisional is out of play, okay, and it will no longer be a provisional ball. Or if that provisional ball becomes the ball in play, it is no longer obviously a provisional ball, it is now the ball in play. We'll talk about when that provisional ball must be abandoned here very shortly. All right, so when the original ball is lost anywhere on the course except the penalty area or is out of bounds, the original ball is no longer the ball in play. Okay, and even if it is found on the golf course after the end of the 3-minute search time. Okay, so if we find that original ball, it is not your ball in play. The provisional is going to become the ball in play. Now your ball is a wrong ball. And there's a great example of golf language and English being completely different. It's your ball that you own, but in the golf, that is a wrong ball now if you play it. And you will get the general penalty if you do play that. Okay? When the provisional ball is played from a spot near the hole than where the original ball is estimated to be, the original ball now no longer is the ball in play. So the example of that shaded area, if she goes up and plays that stroke from B, she played A short of where the original is supposed to be, but then plays the stroke from B, now the original ball becomes a wrong ball and is out of play. The provisional is now the ball in play, even if the 3-minute search time has not concluded. So be careful of when you're playing that provisional. Okay. So when the provisional ball becomes the ball in play, if a player plays a provisional ball into the same general location as the original ball and is unable to identify which ball is which, there's two things that are going to happen. This was one of the rules that used to be a decision-based answer in the old rules, but is now incorporated into the rules of golf. So we're going to talk about if only one of the balls is found, the original or the provisional, we're not sure which one it is, or if both balls are found and we're not sure which one is which. So this is one of those situations where you may have not marked your golf balls. You may have played two Titleist 2s to the same area. I did this once in college, and I'm never going to do it again because I had to go back and play my 5th shot from the tee. Although the old decision was a different decision, but college for me was so long ago, the decisions weren't out then. At least that decision wasn't out then. So let's talk about what's going on here. If only one of the balls is found on the golf course, that ball is treated as a provisional. So if we don't know which is which, that ball is going to be your provisional ball, and you're going to take that ball into play. So basically, you're laying 3 if this was a tee shot situation, but that ball is treated as your provisional, not your original. If you can't tell the difference, you got to take the worst of the situation. If we find both balls, you get a choice. You get to say, hey, I get to pick which ball I want to play, but it is the provisional. So you're going to be playing, laying 3 from that situation. If both balls are right next to each other, we don't know which was the original, we don't know which is the provisional, you're picking the ball to be your provisional and playing on from there. All right, so some exceptions to this rule that we're talking about. That we mentioned the choosies before. This is what's going to happen where the provisional will maybe become the ball in play, or the provisional might not become the ball in play because of this choosy situation that is not a change in the rules, but I want to go over it again for everybody. So a player may substitute another ball under any other rule when it is known or virtually certain what has happened to the ball. But you have the extra option of continuing with your provisional if you wish. So let's go through this here very quickly. So if we know that the ball has come to rest on the course and was moved by an outside influence, the dog example here, you can proceed underneath that rule, or you can play your provisional under stroke and distance. So you either get free relief, or you can go ahead and do your stroke and distance and keep playing the provisional. That's your choice. Okay? Why would you do that? Here's an example of why you would take the stroke and distance and play your provisional. For example, if your ball is lost in the outhouse that we talked about, and we have knowledge of virtual certainty, you are allowed to get free relief from that outhouse and go through that procedure, but you might not like where your relief is. It might be in an area of trees, and you have no shot, because it was way offline, you can go ahead and choose to keep playing the provisional under stroke and distance and make the provisional the ball in play and not take your free relief. That's why this is a choice for the player to make. So movable obstruction or abnormal course condition, we have knowledge of virtual certainty, this rule applies. Same situation with an outside influence deflecting or deliberately stopping it by any person. So I use the term outside influence, but it does apply to a deliberate deflection of people. So if these kids pick up your ball and you don't like where your free relief was, you can play your provisional. Now, we had this question come up at St. Andrews this last week. Well, why can you play a provisional if you have knowledge of virtual certainty that something has happened? And this is if you have played a provisional and then you come upon the knowledge of virtual certainty. So for example, you hit a ball in toward the trees and you're not sure what's over there, you're not sure what's going to happen, if you can even find it, so you correctly play a provisional. You get up there and you find there's an outhouse, and there's a guy in the outhouse that said, yeah, your ball came in here and bounced around, but I can't find it. So we have knowledge of virtual certainty that the ball is in there, so you can go underneath that rule for free, or you can keep playing the provisional with stroke and distance going on. So that's what we're talking about in that situation. You can't play a provisional if you have knowledge of virtual certainty before you play the provisional. All right. So when one of these rules applies, we can go through those procedures there. So that's the knowledge of virtual certain 6 that we're talking about now. All these situations, you get a choice. All right. When must we abandon this provisional ball now? So we get to the point now where that provisional ball cannot be used. So let's figure out what that is. So when a provisional ball has not yet become the ball in play, it must be abandoned in either of these 2 cases. First, when the original ball is found on the golf course outside of a penalty area before the end of the 3-minute search time, the player must play the original. Pretty straightforward. You know, we played a provisional, then we found the ball, so now the provisional's out of play. It's the very basic tenet of this rule. Once you find the original ball, the provisional is no longer an option. Okay? Or when the original ball is found in a penalty area, or it is known to be virtually certain in that penalty area, the player must either play the original ball as it lies or take penalty relief under 17.1d. Okay, so when we find that original ball in the penalty area, the provisional is no longer an option. So if you want to go back and play stroke and distance, you can't just say, well, I piped my provisional, I'm going to use that ball. This rule does not allow that. Once you find your ball in a penalty area and you've played a provisional, the provisional is no longer an option. It is out of play completely. You can go back and play again from the tee in this example, or you may proceed underneath the other back on a line relief or lateral relief options if it's a red penalty area. Okay. In either case, the player must not make any more strokes with the provisional ball because now it's a wrong ball. Again, although it is your ball by ownership, in the rules of golf, you would now be playing a wrong ball and get the general penalty for making a stroke at it. All strokes made with that provisional ball before it was abandoned, including any strokes made and penalty strokes made from that ball, do not count. So if you had played a provisional and just happened to top it along the way the whole time, each one of those strokes is going to go away. We're not going to count those at any point, or any penalty strokes that you may have incurred from solely playing that provisional ball. Now, like if you played a wrong ball in that situation thinking it was your provisional ball, you're going to still retain that wrong ball penalty because that is not solely from playing the provisional ball, even though you thought it might have been your provisional ball. Playing a wrong ball is playing a wrong ball, and it applies to all golf balls in or possibly becoming in play. All right, so let's talk about Rule 18 question for you. In an individual stroke play event, Jackie's tee shot is being searched for in the general area. After 1 minute of search, she tells Doug, I'm going to go hit a provisional, can you keep searching? Jackie returns to the tee and hits her provisional and returns to the search for her original ball. Within that 3-minute search period, Jackie finds the original ball. So what is the ruling? Well, this is a new ruling from what it used to be. So once she went forward to look for her golf ball, last year, she couldn't go back and play a provisional. This year she gets to, as long as it's within the 3-minute search time. So the answer's there. Jackie's original ball is in play, laying 1. Okay? Again, you're allowed to play a provisional any time for lost ball, provided your search time is still active. The time spent returning to the tee and playing for a provisional ball counts in the 3-minute time limit because she started searching for her ball. But again, if she had started to walk and said, wait a minute, I can play a provisional, and goes back, her search time has not started, so that 3-minute time has not started. Okay? Hopefully everybody understands that situation, but now we get to play a provisional ball a little bit more freely without doing that going search forward. Because if you recall what the decision used to be, it actually said if you go about 50 yards forward, now we consider you going for a search. Kind of silly to have an arbitrary number defining that, but that's what the decision was saying. But now we're allowing you to play it. All right, so we made it to the final rule of the day, rule number 19, the unplayable ball. This rule has not changed very much. It has changed a little bit for an option in the bunker, but for the most part, this procedure is exactly the same. So a player may decide to take an unplayable ball relief anywhere except the penalty area, same as it has always been. And then we have the relief options that we're going to list out for the general area or the putting green, and then we have the relief options that we're going to list out for a ball in a bunker. All right, so here's the significant change that we're talking about with this rule. We have an extra relief option for an unplayable ball in a bunker that you can take the ball completely out of the bunker using back on a line relief for 2 strokes. If you're a very, very bad bunker player, this is an option for you. Or if you're playing somewhere where the bunkers are just really severe, such as over in Scotland, you get a lot of those stacked face bunkers, a 2-stroke option to get out of there might not be the worst thing in the world for you. So that is an option that we can allow now. That can get your ball out of the bunker. All right, so the purpose of this rule allows the player to choose whether or not his or her ball can be played. And this is true anywhere on the golf course except the penalty area. So no matter if your ball is in the middle of the fairway or on the putting green and you want to take an unplayable lie, you can do that. There's nobody that can stop you from doing that. If you're playing in a partner format, your partner might try to stop you from doing that for certain situations, but that's between you two to work out. All right, so a player is the only person who can make this decision by taking penalty relief underneath one of these 2 rules, 19.2 or 19.3, that we're going to talk about here very shortly. And so if an unplayable ball relief is allowed, the ball is going to be treated that way as the player's discretion. But if the ball is unplayable, and it uses the word unplayable in the rules, which is interesting because it's not unplayable in the rules of golf, it's unplayable in the rules of English that we've talked about, you are not allowed to take an unplayable ball in that penalty area. So if you have a bad lie in a penalty area and you want to take relief from that bad lie, you're going to use the penalty area options, not the options of an unplayable lie. All right, so let's talk about what we can do for an unplayable ball that's in the general area or on the putting green. A player may take unplayable relief under any of the 3 options, A, B, or C. Those haven't changed. The A, B's, and C's are before. I always thought of them as A, all the way back to where you last played from, B, behind where you played, where your ball is, and C is the club links option. So it's very similar, but we're going to talk about those relief options individually here shortly. Anytime you take an unplayable ball, you have a 1-stroke penalty. And this is how we're going to do it. So option 1, if you played from spot 1 there, you can go back to where you last played from for 1 stroke. So if you don't like your options 2 and 3, you can do that. What's also unique about this option for stroke and distance is the original ball does not need to be found. So we can just go back and do stroke and distance for an unplayable lie without finding the original ball. However, if you want to take options 2 or 3, you must find the original ball because they become reference points in your relief options. So if we want to take back on the line relief in option there number 2, we need to find the original ball. In this example here, we have found the original ball. It's a little white dot there in the bush. So that has created our reference point. So now we can line up our reference line, go back as far as we want, and go underneath the back on the line relief options for 1 stroke. Or we can take the lateral relief options, the other example of when we have a 2 club length relief area, and drop the ball in that relief area. And however, please keep in mind, the reference point is the lie of the original ball. So for example, if you see this player takes 2 club lengths out to the right, there is a very small little relief area that's probably not very good for this player and might not even get completely out of the bush. The relief area is still in that bush. It doesn't start on the edge and then go out from there. Your reference point is the golf ball, not the nice part where there's no bush. So it is possible, if you were using that option, to take more than 1 unplayable lie to get it out of trouble. So you would drop the ball, take your penalty stroke, and maybe have to take another unplayable lie underneath the lateral option. Okay, so here they are summarized for us again. Stroke and distance relief, go back to where you last played from. Drop the ball under 14.6. Okay? Back on the line relief. We go back on that point as far back as you want. 1 stroke penalty, drop in the relief area. And again, the procedures of the back on the line relief will apply. You select your reference point. If you don't select it and drop it, your reference point is defined for you by where your golf ball hits the golf course. Or let me go ahead and go through this a little bit more clearly for us to make sure that since I've got the slides up here, we're going to get that point on the course that is on this reference line. So when we're doing the back on the line relief, we want to make sure that we have that reference point on the line, and then we get the 1 club length away from that. So it's a different procedure again. We're not dropping on the line. We're creating a reference point on the reference line. It can't be near the hole in the original ball, but can be back as far back as you want. The relief area is 1 club length. Can't be near the hole in the reference point now that we've selected. Okay? And it can be any area of the golf course. So we can drop this ball in a bunker, in a penalty area, in the fairway, in the rough, whatever it becomes, we can drop it in any area of the golf course. Okay? So for lateral relief, we have kind of the same situations as far as the procedures and limitations. The reference point is still the spot of the original ball, but there is no relief line or reference line now for this procedure. We just have the original ball there. So the relief area is still 2 club lengths that we talked about. It is no nearer the hole in the reference point, and again, can be any area of the golf course. All right, so now if we have a ball in a bunker, we are still allowed to take an unplayable lie for this. This rule hasn't changed with the exception of an addition to this rule. So if your ball is in a bunker and you declare it unplayable, you have the options of going back where you last played from, which more times than not is going to be outside of the bunker, but this is stroke and distance. So you get to go back again at any point and play stroke and distance. So example, this player played from the fairway, knocked it into the bunker. Option number 1, we're going to go back and play stroke and distance. We still have the back on a line relief in the bunker. We still have the lateral options in the bunker, and we're going to add this new option of a back on the line outside of the bunker. All right, so that extra relief option is going to be 2 strokes, but it will get you out of that, so out of the bunker if you wish. So the procedure is going to be the same. The reference point is going to start with, excuse me, not the reference point, the ball is going to start the reference line for us. So we're going to have the reference line created from the ball through the hole, and then the player selects the reference point outside of the bunker as far as the back as they want, and drop the ball within a relief area on that procedure for a 2-stroke penalty getting it out of the bunker. So this is a very severe penalty to do this. Your other options are still available. Number 1, you can go back where you last played from. It's only a 1-stroke penalty. Options 2 and 3 are still a 1-stroke penalty, but options 2 and 3, it must be noted that the ball has to stay in the bunker underneath those options. So if we're taking back on a line relief inside the bunker for a 1-stroke penalty, we keep the ball in the bunker. If we take the lateral relief, we keep the ball in the bunker for 1-stroke penalty as well. Even though, for example, let's say that your lateral relief options, 2 club lengths in your relief area does happen to get you outside of the bunker, you are not allowed to drop it there for any reason. Not for 1 stroke, not for 2 strokes. If you want that ball out of the bunker, you can only go back to where you last played from or use the back on the line relief option to get it out of the bunker, to get it behind the bunker. You're not allowed to go sideways out of a bunker is the way to think about it there. All right, so the question we have here for number 19, for Rule 19. In an individual stroke play event, Todd is taking an unplayable lie for his original ball plugged in a bunker. He lifts the original ball, rakes the area where he makes the footprints, and smoothed out the pitch mark, which are both in the 2 club length lateral relief area. He drops the substituted ball in the right way into the relief area and makes a stroke. How many total penalty strokes for Todd in this situation? So, interestingly enough, there might be some penalties for Todd. That usually doesn't happen. But one of the options is no penalty strokes, so let's see what goes on here. All right, so if Todd's taking an unplayable ball, there's a penalty stroke right there. We already know that he doesn't get free relief, so we know we've got 1 there. But the situation is he's raking the area of where he's going to drop his ball. Is this a violation? And the answer is yes. Todd is not allowed to rake the relief area. Underneath Rule 14, we talked about where your relief area is, and then Rule 8 talks about not being able to improve that relief area. So there's a 1-stroke penalty underneath the unplayable ball rule and 2 more strokes for improving that area that he is dropping his golf ball. So there are some situations where you are not penalized for raking. This is not one of them because this is a relief area that I am going to put a ball into play. I cannot rake it. So this is also a totally different situation of a ball played out of a bunker where we have that unrestricted limit of going ahead and raking as much as we want. This is not that situation because my ball was in the bunker and I was dropping it in the bunker. So cannot make the improvements in that situation. All right, so now we are to the quiz review for what we handed out earlier. So let's just go over this real quickly. Question number 1 is always true and false. A player may take penalty relief for a ball in a penalty area that is in a no-play zone Must that player do that? And the answer is true. Okay? A player does not have the option to play the ball when it is in the no-play zone in a penalty area. Again, that's when the ball is in the no-play zone. No chance of playing it. You must take your penalty relief in that situation. Okay? B, there is no free relief for an embedded ball in a penalty area. True or false? Hopefully we know by now that that is true. If your ball is embedded in a penalty area, you do not get free embedded ball relief. That is only in the general area. We must proceed under the rules of the penalty area. If a lake is not marked by the committee, it is treated as yellow penalty area. True or false? And the answer is false. Right there in the definition of a penalty area, it says if it's not marked, it is treated as a red penalty area. So you would have that additional option of the lateral relief using your two club links if it's not marked. If it's a KCGA event, it will be marked. I can promise you that. A player may not stand in the penalty area to make a stroke after taking relief from that penalty area. We've talked about this specifically. That is false. If a player's relief area happens to be in a situation where it is in play and he's standing in that penalty area, that is completely okay. A redrop is not required. In fact, if the player did redrop it, we would have a penalty for that player moving their ball in play. So this is not taking free relief, so you would still not have to take full relief, as you would term it, as where you would be standing. That is for an abnormal course condition where you're taking free relief. You cannot have interference at all from that abnormal course condition. The penalty area is not the same rule in that situation. All right, so a situation here in stroke play, Bailey's ball is in a penalty area. She grounds her club at address, which moves a leaf that was covering her ball, but her ball does not move. What is the ruling? Double question mark for some reason on that one. I'm not sure why I did that. But there's no penalty. A player is allowed to ground their club in a penalty area, and removal of a loose impediment is allowed. So both things that happened here is fine. No penalty as long as her ball did not move. In stroke play, Taylor's tee shot is at rest in a red penalty area. She correctly determines her two club length relief area, a part of which is on the putting green. She drops a ball that strikes the putting green and rolls onto the fringe in the relief area. She places the ball from there and holds the shot. So what is her score for the hole? Well, we've got a couple situations going on here. First of all, is she allowed to drop the ball on the putting green when she is taking relief from a penalty area? And the answer is yes, provided it is within the rules. However, when her ball strikes the putting green, it has to come to rest and be played from the putting green. It can't be played from another area of the golf course by this rule, even though it's within her relief area that she measured. So, for example here, she can drop a ball on the putting green, but the ball must remain on the same area of the course it first struck. When she played the ball from the fringe, although in the relief area that she measured, she got a two-stroke penalty for playing from a wrong place. So that ball must be played from the putting green when it first struck the putting green. Question number 4, in stroke play, Todd's tee shot is at rest in a penalty area that is in a no-play zone. He plays a stroke that stays in the no-play zone. He then plays another stroke that comes to rest on the putting green and holds the putt. So what is Todd's score for the hole? Something crazy must be going on here because he's getting some penalties again. Each stroke is going to count here. So he gets a 8 on the hole and made a snowman. 4 talent strokes and 4 penalty strokes. Each stroke from the no-play zone counts with a 2-stroke applied for each. The intervening act here is the stroke, so we don't have anything that is just going to be a one-time penalty for multiple occurrences. Rule 1.3c4 says the stroke is going to be the intervening act. Now, it must be pointed out here as well, some of the answers I do believe I had on the test or this quiz is, if this is determined to be a serious breach of playing from the no-play zone, Rule 14.7 applies, meaning playing from a wrong place and a serious breach, this must be corrected. Okay, so if, for example, a player is in a no-play zone and makes a stroke and advances the ball 200 yards, okay, and gets it closer to the hole, the player has made a serious breach of playing from a wrong place and must go back and correct that error by taking the penalty relief outside of that no-play zone. So this player would be disqualified if they did not correct that error. So please make sure we understand that Rule 14.7, playing from a wrong place, is the underlying rule of the no-play zone. So the provisions of playing from a wrong place still apply from a no-play zone. All right, in individual stroke play, Doug's ball is at rest in a red penalty area, and he elects to take lateral relief. He drops the ball in the right way, but it comes to rest outside of the relief area. So first of all, let's make sure we understand what dropping in the right way is. So he dropped it from knee height. It landed in the relief area, which is the right way, but it came to rest outside the relief area. So he correctly lifts the ball to redrop as he is supposed to, but notices that there's a branch overhanging his line of play, so he changes his mind and drops correctly using the back on a line option. Which of the following is correct? So what we're basically asking you here, can we change relief options in this situation? And this answer is going to be no. He cannot change relief options because he did everything right and the ball dropped how he was supposed to, but it is required to be redropped. If you read the rules specifically, 14.5b, 3, if we drop a ball in the right way and it requires a redrop, you must proceed underneath the same rule with the same option. You cannot change your relief option. So we must go underneath that procedure. When Doug went back from one option to the other, now he's getting a wrong place penalty because he is proceeding underneath a wrong option. All right, finishing up on 6, some more true and false for you. Stroke and distance relief may not be used if the relief area is near the hole of where the ball lies. For example, a tee shot hits a tree and goes behind the teeing area. So taking stroke and distance in that situation would actually bring you closer to the hole than the lie of your original ball in play, but this is allowed in the rules of golf. At any time, a player may proceed under stroke and distance, even if the relief area is near the hole of where your ball lies. A great example of this story I tell quite a bit is I was playing some college golf. Player had a 3-foot birdie putt, went to ram it in, take the break from it because it was a sloping putt, completely missed the hole, ran the ball off the green 40 yards away into a greenside bunker. He took an unplayable lie, went back to his stroke and distance, replaced his ball at 3 feet, and made the putt for a 5. Completely within the rules. His ball was at rest and in play 40 yards from the hole. One of his options was 3 feet from the hole. That's completely fine. Knowing the rules really saved that guy a few strokes probably. Okay, if a ball cannot be found in the penalty area, stroke and distance relief must apply. And as we've talked about earlier, that is false. If a ball is lost in a penalty area and we have knowledge or virtual certainty that the ball is in that penalty area, the penalty area rules apply. And also, if we put a ball in play there and find the original ball is completely out of play, even if we find it outside of the penalty area. We've proceeded correctly once we have knowledge and virtual certainty, even if it's not 100% true. Remember, we're 95% true or thinking that it's happened. The ball is now in play underneath the penalty area rules. True or false, a provisional must be announced to the opponent or fellow competitor. Well, this statement is false in a lot of ways. One, we don't have to do that to anybody anymore. We just have to make an announcement to somebody. Two, the word fellow competitor doesn't even exist in the rules of golf anymore. So we don't have fellow competitors with us. We still have an opponent possibly in match play, but we just have people playing golf with us. So a provisional only needs to be announced to somebody. D, true or false, a player takes unplayable ball relief and his drop rolls back into the same condition. He must redrop it without penalty, and this is false. When you are taking an unplayable lie, once you drop the ball back in play, it's back in play no matter where it comes to rest. So if it happens to be the same situation, you got to deal with it again. So we get the 1-stroke penalty for the unplayable ball, but then the ball is back in play and there's no redrop required unless it rolls out of the relief area, which, as we know, underneath Rules 14, we're going to redrop it if it's out of the relief area. So the ball is in play and a redrop is not necessary. So make sure your relief area is going to be completely defined in a certain way that you've got a good lie, or at least a better lie than you had. And this is also a situation where possibly the multiple unplayable ball rule or multiple unplayable ball penalties could apply to get you out of trouble. So for example, if you hit your ball into a bush and it's just a bunch of crap behind you and the back on the line relief option is not good and you don't want to go all the way back to where you last played from, you may take 2 unplayable lies or more to get it out sideways, and that could even actually get you into the fairway. It doesn't matter if you change the cut of grass, but you could be taking multiple unplayable balls to get yourself out of a situation completely. In taking lateral relief for an unplayable ball in a bunker, if part of the relief area is in the general area, the player may drop there for 2 strokes. And as we completely talked about earlier, that is false. You cannot go sideways out of a bunker at any point within any rule of the unplayable ball rule. So the only time you're going to get the ball out of a bunker is with 1-stroke penalty, is going back to where you last played from, if it happened to be out of the bunker, which it generally is. Or the back on the line procedure to get it out of the bunker is a 2-stroke penalty. But lateral relief must stay in the bunker for an unplayable ball. All right, that's all I have for Rule 19 today. Covered 17, 18, and 19. Thanks, we'll see you then.